Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to AusLit 101, and we're moving on today to politics. Woo! So we're still non-fiction, whatever. This is just I'm gonna focus on just overviews of Australian politics. There's gonna be no biographies mentioned really, just because I want to keep it even, and I could make an entire another list on prime minister biographies, and I have a book in here that's all about prime ministers, so don't worry about that. But mostly we're just sticking to just general Australian political history here, and it's really exciting because a lot has happened. And so the first book I'm gonna recommend, if you what's the one, I'm gonna say give this book a try. This is Dreamers and Schemers by Frank. I can't say his last name. This came out probably a couple of years ago. This is the only full political history of Australia I could literally ever find. And I honestly think I wouldn't be surprised if it's literally the only one. But this book spans such a long time. It goes all the way back to the pre-colonial days and ends in the 2020s. So it's a long ass time to write about. And I feel like because the span of this book is so big, there is a lot of just sweeping generalizations, and you don't get much of the nuts and bolts of certain political events. But in saying that, I do love that Frank talks about a lot of state level politics and all that as well, rather than just keeping it federal. I do love how he adds that extra layer of including states history as well. In terms of the history of it, it is chronological, and the biggest the drawback for me of this book is I do wish we spent more time, or that certain events would have their own chapter dedicated to them, rather than just being medged and wedged in with everything else. For such as Federation, like the World Wars, even the Great Depression after. And I'd even include the dismissal of Gough Whitlam should have had its own chapter because there's so much to that. But again, if you want a great, interesting, just a general read of Australian political history, this is the one to get, and it's probably like the only one you can find too. So pick up that one if you just want to give it a try. And then next, I'm going to recommend a classic in of its own right. It's becoming a classic. This is The Light on the Hill by Ross McMullin. This is the history of the Labour Party from 1891 to 1991. I'm pretty sure there has been oh my god, I can't say a word, updates of this book since then, and it's important because you know how we talked about after Eureka with the rise of the labor unions and all that. This is what those labor unions turned into the Labour Party, just casually. This is the research in this book is incredible. I love the narrative style. It's completely readable, just like Dreamers and Schemers. Mullen does not shy away from exploring the controversy that has gone through the Labour Party throughout the decades. Also, the challenges that this party has faced. There's different parties, political parties that come up and try to, take over from the Labour Party and all that. And just seeing the evolution of this political party is so interesting as well. And just the dynamics and leadership changes and policy shifts that go on in the 100 years. It's just incredibly interesting, and probably the best book I think ever written about a political party I've ever read, and it's incredibly interesting and arguably the most important book about one of the most important parties, the most probably important party in Australian history. So I'm gonna say do that one as well. And then we're gonna get to we've got two more left. I'm gonna recommend, if you want some prime ministers, I've got a book for you. But if you want to do like the main, I would say there's four major prime ministers you've got to learn about, and that's going to be Menzies, Curtin, Bob Hawke, and John Howard. Those four are the ones that truly changed this country. Both of them are wartime prime ministers, and Hawke and Howard are both from the 80s and onwards in terms of leadership. They've obviously been around before that. Very interesting histories. These men are so interesting to learn about. And so if you want to do the main four, like major prime ministers, stick to those two. Stick to those four. I could have kept going. I could have put Gough on Whitlam on this. I could have put Billy Hughes if I wanted to. I could have kept going. But I'm gonna recommend for you Australian Prime Ministers here. This is edited by Michelle Gratton, and this is a quick, couple pages summary of every Prime Minister and what they've done. Again, this has been updated a lot of times. This goes to John Howard, so like the early 2000s. And the reason I recommend this book is because there are prime ministers in here. As someone who loves, prime minister memoirs and all that, the majority of these prime ministers will never get their own book, or they won't get their big, 600-page, big biography. They won't get that. So there are some in here where this is the only time you will get a quick biography of their life, especially when it comes to the national prime ministers we've had. And even some of like the earlier ones, you don't hear much about it anymore. So I'd recommend this one too if you just want an overview of every prime minister and what they done. It's really interesting and a good reference, to be honest, because again, not every prime minister will have their own book like America does, where every president has 4 books of them published every day and whatever. So that's one I'm going to recommend. And the last book I'm going to be talking about today is The Lucky Country by David Horne. This again is another classic in political history writing. Horne's intent. I don't own a copy of this. I know Penguin does, like a modern classics of it, but this was Horne's intent was to portray Australia's climb to power and wealth based on luck and connections rather than the country itself, because how we've always leaned on England and then to America, and he believed that Australia was a second-rate country, and it's just because of our political and economic weaknesses. This was written in the 60s, and it's so incredibly interesting to read, especially now we're in the 2020s, and just the way he talks about how Australia has a lot of lack of innovations and ambitions in a lot of developing ways compared to a lot of other countries. I would argue there's some stuff we're really well ahead in when it comes to unions, and that's pretty much it really. But it's an incredibly passionate critique of this country. It's a classic in its own right. Pick it up if you haven't. It's that good. It even made it to the Penguin line, which not many Australian books do. And it's just a soaring critique of Australia, and it's passionate and it's lovely. And that is a quick guide to if you want to do some books about Australian politics, where you could start. Again, I could have kept going. So if you have any more recommendations, leave them in the comments for everyone to look at, and I will also have a peek at them too. But yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.